The Portland Area Historical Society is proudly presents Dr. Gary Hauck. Am I saying that right? Renowned West Michigan educator and historian, in celebration of our nation's 250th anniversary, as he brings early American history to life through his portrayal of Founding Father Patrick Henry. Does anybody know the famous line from Patrick Henry? Very good. Okay, so I present Dr. Hauck.
Good evening. What an honor it is for me to be here tonight and talk to you about the founding of our country that we today call the United States of America. Now, I'm now retired. It's the 1790s, and my memory's not what it used to be. But I'm going to do the very best I can to go back in time and tell you all about my part, my role in the founding of our country. When my good friend George Washington became the president, I went to him one day and I said, "Sir, what an honor to know you as the foundation of our country." And he said to me, "Patrick, I might be the foundation, but you are interwoven in our tapestry in so many ways." And I was so thankful to hear him say that to me. Just recently now in these 1790s, looking back over my life. Now, my name used to be Patrick Henry Jr. But please don't call me Junior. My dad was not Patrick Henry, he was John Henry. But my uncle was a noted Anglican preacher, and he was Patrick Henry the Elder, and so they called him Patrick Henry Sr., and they called me Patrick Henry Jr. When he passed on in 1777, people just now call me Patrick, and I do like that, although I miss my uncle very much. Both my uncle and my pa came from Aberdeenshire in Scotland. Any Scots in here tonight? A couple of you. All right, well, bless your hearts. We have some shared blood. So Aberdeenshire, I'm told, was so beautiful. But both my uncle and my pa, after they went to school at the University of Aberdeenshire, came here to see the Jamestown colony and become a part of our movement here. Now, Aberdeenshire University had a wide variety of majors. My uncle majored in theology to become a priest, and my pa majored in law. He was a map maker, he was also a surveyor, but his aspiration was to be a lawyer and maybe even someday a judge or magistrate in the colonies. So they came in the 1720s. But when they got here, Jamestown was now only a relic of its past. It was founded, as you know, in 1604, Jamestown, at what was James Fort, and it burned down twice, in 1676 and also in 1698. So the capital was moved from Jamestown to Williamsburg, what was then known Middletown or Middleborough, or the Middle Plains, Middle Plantation, and renamed in honor of King William III. And so they moved here to the Hanover County area, not too far from Williamsburg. And my pa became a tobacco farmer and owned a pretty good sized plantation. And he met a widow of British stock whose name was Sarah Winston. And they had many children. I was number 2 of 11 of them. I had an elder brother whose name was William. And I had some sisters like Liz and Annie. Liz, a lay preacher in the Methodist Church of all things. If you were not Anglican back then, you were not part of the state church. So that got her in some deep water with some people. And of course, Annie was a wonderful writer, and William was a businessman. But let me tell you about our family and how this all got started. My pa got married in the year 1732, and I came along in 1736. And when I was born, we had one tiny one-room schoolhouse in Hanover County. Anybody here ever go to a one-room schoolhouse? You did? Wow. Where?
Knox Country School. It's right out. It burned down, but it used to be around the corner of Knox Road and Keeper Highway.
Oh, that's totally awesome. How about over here? Where'd you go?
In Ontario.
In Ontario?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Fantastic. Well, this is amazing. So you know all about a one-room schoolhouse. The one-room schoolhouse I went to had 5 grades, and that was it. And we had 5 long tables. The first one was very low, and then the second one a little bigger, and by the 5th grade row, that was the tallest one. And so we sat at our table to do our studies, and one time a day, each of us 5 classes would be called to the front bench. And that bench, I thought was for the bad kids. It was called the learner's bench. So when she rang that cowbell, I came forward with my classmates, we sat there, and then we had our lesson for our numbers or our letters or our whatever the case may be. And sometimes we had the entire class together learn some lessons. History, art, music, nature, our study of science. And I loved history. And I learned about the other colonies. My heart just beat fast. I wanted to hear about the colonies, and also about England, and about Europe, and about what was going on all around the world. I loved that. I also loved music. I could sing. And I also learned how to play the fiddle. And so the tavern owner sometimes would call me and say, "Hey, Patrick, come and play your fiddle for us." And I would go and play my fiddle, and we would dance some of those old Scottish dances, like Thread the Needle. We had a great time with that. So I loved music, and I also loved to hunt, besides dancing, and I loved to fish. So my pa would take me out hunting and fishing, and that was really great. So after grade 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, when I was around 10 years of age or 11, we no longer had a school to go to. And so I told my pa, "What's going to happen now? Where do I go to school now?" He said, "Patrick, I'm going to be your tutor in the classics, and Uncle Patrick's going to be your tutor in religion." So I had 2 teachers. Now I had Ms. McGinney for 5 years, a lady, and I'm going to have men as my teachers. I wasn't quite used to that. And so I thought they would be a lot harder on me, and in some ways they were, but they were also a little easier on me than Miss McGinney was. But my pa taught me the classics. Latin, posse pecore, non posse non pecore, non posse pecore. The words of Augustine, St. Augustine. I learned Greek, and archein hen lagos prostatan kai theon hen halagas, in the Greek New Testament. I learned classical Hebrew. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Bereshith bara Elohim ha'eretz v'ha'shamayim tohu v'bohu. I learned the classics from him. I also learned Plato and Socrates and Aristotle. Can you believe it? As a 12, 13-year-old young man, I felt like I was there at Aberdeenshire University learning from my pa. And then one day he said to me, "Patrick, when's the last time you thought about how you think?" What would you say? What a question. So I said, I don't know, Pa. I don't know. He said, "Would you call yourself fair-minded?" I don't know. "Do you consider a source before you evaluate the information? Do you look at all sides of an argument or an issue? Or are you quick to make a snap judgment? Can you withhold judgment until all the facts that are needed are in?" My pa was teaching me how to be a thinker. He said, "Patrick, you need to learn how to identify and challenge your assumptions. How to think contextually. Not just take a sentence out of that paragraph, but what did that sentence say in the context of the whole book? Not just take a line out of a speech, but look at that in light of the entire speech. Look at the context of what that word is and where that word is spoken or written." And then he said, if you hear an argument, there's more than one way to look at it. Look at it from this side, and that perspective, and this perspective, and that perspective. Look at every possible way that you can look at that issue to understand all sides before you make up your mind. And even then, when you make up your mind, you might find out more information that might change your mind. So keep an open mind for more facts that come your way. He was teaching me how to be a lawyer as a teenager, and I had no idea. I had learned lessons from Aberdeen Law School. I think back on that now, and I'm so thankful that my Paul had that vested interest in me. And Uncle Patrick, my, like being catechized every day. So I learned about God the Father, and God the Son, and God the Spirit, and the work of evil in the world, and salvation, and the Church Universal, and the end-time judgment. All these great doctrines of the Anglican faith. And so he wanted me to know those planks of the creed and those planks of the canons of the faith. So when I turned 15, I felt like I had graduated from a pretty good school. The school of the Henrys. The school of Patrick Henry Sr. and John Henry, and they were my teachers, and I was so proud of them. Well, at 15 years of age, we were then told to find our own way. So my loving father and my mother said, you know, we've done our part. Now it's your turn to earn some money. And so I thought, my lands, what in the world can I do? I might try and be a store clerk and sell things. I had only two issues with that. I was very, very shy, and I hated to talk in public. And so there I was trying to sell things, and I was also a pushover. So if something cost 5 cents, and they didn't have 5 cents, I'd say, whatever you have, give it to me and that'll be fine. And so I could not stand up for the price of the goods. And we sold molasses, already taxed, 1633 onward. The Brett's already taxed molasses. We sold sugar. We sold some rum. Sugar for jumbo cookies. Oh, those were so good. And they were popular in the colonies back at that time period. Molasses cookies. Potted meat. Nothing like potted meat. You take some meat, however you fix it, roast it, bake it. You put it into an earthen crock, and you seal it with some lard or wax. It'll last 4 or 5 months. And so we sold some potted meat. We sold some vegetables and some fruits and other kinds of yarns and materials. But my brother William said, Patrick, you've got to stand up and get the right amount. But William, I can't do that. If they only have 10 cents and it costs 25, I give it to them for 10 cents. You can't do that. And so he finally just said, tell you what, we're going to go into our own shop. We're going to do our own shop, and I'm going to train you on how to be a more outspoken young man. All right, you can try. So he got enough money together to buy a little shop there in Hanover County, and I worked for my brother for about less than a year. He just said one day, you're a lost cause. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. So about that time, my mother, bless her wonderful heart, took me to hear preaching during a period of time in our colony called the Awakening. We heard men like George Whitfield, Jonathan Edwards, and Isaac Backus, and John Leland. These are great preachers who would come by. They were not Anglicans. Reverend Samuel Davies, Presbyterian of all things. And so I heard him one day, and he stirred my heart and my mind. He talked to me here, he talked to me there. I can remember it like it happened yesterday. He preached on James chapter 2. Faith without works is dead. You show me your faith without your works, and I'll show you my faith with my works and by my works. And by the way, he said, salvation is not just a personal issue. For those who have found their salvation, what good is that to those who are around you? Are you salt and light in the world that needs your message and your life? What about the orphans who are around you? What about the widows? What about those who are needy? What good is your salvation to them? Are you showing them God's love and God's light through your actions as well as through your life and your words? That made an impact. I learned 2 things from him that day. The power of oratory and the values of life. What is life really all about? By the way, he preached against slavery. That kind of hit a nerve because my pa had slaves. Now, I'll tell you that my pa was very kind to our slaves. He knew them all by name. He treated them like employees, and Ma and Pa would work with them in the fields. And so I appreciated that. But it left this question in my mind, is it right? If we talk about equality as colonists and as patriots, what do we do with that? Also, separation of church and state. These men talked about, and the Reverend talked about. Why is it that we have one approved church, and we're all supposed to support that? And the crown, the royal crown, pays for those preachers. Why is that? What about our friends who are Catholics, or of the Jewish faith, or Presbyterian, or Methodist, or Baptist? What about them? Do they not have the right to their own point of view, their own conscience, their own faith? Don't they have that right? So these things really resounded in me as I began to think this through. Well, in those services, I met a young lady whose name was also Sarah. And I recognized her from our early days in the school together. We used to hunt tadpoles together and play hide and seek together and play tag together. And so Sarah Sheldon and I became good friends. And we thought a lot alike. We had the same values, the same impressions, the same ideas of how to think and how to believe, how to share our faith, and how to try to live our faith. And so when she turned 16, I was 18, I thought, ooh, she's also pretty good looking. I hadn't noticed that before. And so I said to Paul, what did you decide to marry Ma? What gave you that idea? He said, well, the Bible says, whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing. And I knew that your Ma and I were on the same page, had the same values, the same ideas of life, had the same faith, and we fell in love, and we decided that was a good thing for us to do, so we did. He said, why do you ask? Paul, why do you think? His comment to me was, son, go for it, but talk to her father first. And so I went to Mr. Sheldon one day, and I said, Mr. Sheldon, I'm in love with your daughter, Sarah, and I'd love to have her hand in marriage. He said to me, oh, Patrick, I'm so happy for that. I've seen you for years, and I've thought about it to my own mind. There would be the perfect man to marry my daughter. You have my blessing. He was so happy that I asked that we got married in their parlor, in their home. And so my uncle, Patrick Sr., officiated at our ceremony in that lovely home. And it was a beautiful ceremony, short but sweet, and we had our marriage. At the end of our wedding ceremony, Mr. Sheldon came to me and he said, I have a gift for you. And I said, you do? I don't see anything. Where is it? He said, I'm going to give you a plantation home and 300 acres. Pine/plantation. And the word slash in our colony meant a wooded, swampy area. It wasn't the best property in the world, but I had some good acreage there for tobacco farm as well. And so, what do you say to that? What a wonderful gift. And so we were just deeply touched by that, and we embraced him and embraced it, and moved into that lovely plantation house, 300 acres, and also 6 slaves. So again, I thought, what do I do with that? So my only conclusion was to, at least at that point in time, treat my slaves the way Ma and Pa treated theirs. Learn their names. Treat them like human beings. There are employees. I'm going to work with them in the field and plow with them in the field. They're going to know us, and we're going to love them. They're going to love us. That's what we did. So I think my 6 slaves would tell you that they were a part of our family at Pine/Plantation. Well, we got married in the year 1754. Now, if you know what happened back in that year, what a famine and what a drought we had. I mean, for almost a decade, we went through about 10 years of a horrendous famine and drought, and we planted and we harvested very, very little. Our best year in our first few was 10% of our yield, 10%. And one day, if things could not get any worse, they did. Lightning struck our house, and it burned clear to the ground. And so my dear Sarah was devastated. She felt totally bereft. We had lost everything at that point. We had nothing left. And her loving father again said to us, come live in our house. You live with us, you stay with us, and Patrick, you work in my tavern. And I said, what, doing what? By playing the fiddle, of course. You'll be a fiddle player and wait on tables and do whatever else you can do to help us out in the tavern. And so I did. So there at the Hanover Tavern, I was a fiddle player, and I also served tables. And you know, back in that time period, to think back on these early years of my life, taverns were kind of a new thing. Some folks might come for a tankard of ale. Some might come for a bite to eat. Same meal for everybody. One meal for all. Some might stay overnight in one of the 4 or 5 rooms they had, who were going by horse, like from Richmond to Philadelphia, and stay for the lodging. One price for all. And so I learned a lot about the business. The whole idea of taverns came from France, but now they're here in the colonies, and we try to replicate that idea pretty well. We'll learn how to store food, how to make it last. We had a box oven, a box stove that was also a wood burning stove. So we had some baked goods. So my Sarah could make those jumbo cookies and molasses cookies to serve those as well. And we began to raise a family. So we had our first, second, and third child during those days in the tavern. So she would try her best to work when she could also, and also myself as well. And I loved playing my fiddle, and when she heard that fiddle, she would come out and we would dance around that floor sometimes, and I loved that. But, talk about how God works all things together for good. We had a young man who came by our tavern almost every day. A student at the College of William and Mary. He was studying law. His name was Tom. Last name was Jefferson. And so Tom was 17. I was 23. And so we would sit at our table and we would talk. And I said to him one day, I said, Tom, my pa said to me one day, when's the last time you thought about how you think? And Tom said, oh, good for him. And what did he tell you? So I went through the distinctives that my pa told me. And Tom said, I'm learning that same concept at William and Mary. Do you want a couple of books of mine to read? I said, please. So he gave me his books that he was studying. He would read, I would read. He would read, I would read. He had a test. He would tell me what those answers were, those questions. And before I knew it, I was falling in love with law. The whole system of law. And so other lawyers came in to have their ale or their food, and they heard us bantering back and forth. And we talked about separation of church and state. We talked about equality. We talked about individual soul liberty. We talked about these great concepts. And so these lawyers said to me, Patrick, you ought to become a lawyer. And I said, I can't go to college. I'm a young husband, I'm a young father, I have responsibility. I can't go to college. They said, you don't have to. The way our colony operates, you can go to a board, request a board meeting. They will talk to you for 2 or 3 hours. They'll examine you, and if you pass the board, they will give you a license to practice law. I said, are you kidding me? No. So I went ahead and I studied all that I could study, day and night, for weeks and weeks and weeks. Finally, in that wonderful year of 1760, I went to appear before the board there in Hanover County, and for 3 hours they asked me questions. And I had a wonderful time. I loved answering those questions. At the end of it, they had me leave the room for a minute and then come back in the room, and they said this to me. They said, Patrick, your knowledge of case history and case studies is not as strong as we'd like it to be, but you have the gift of oratory. Me? Wow. They also said, you know how to think. Thank my Paul for that. And we like your sense of humor. You know how to get along with others. We're going to give you the approval to become a licensed lawyer. And so I was. So 1760, I hung up my shingle and I began to practice law. And I absolutely loved it. And Tom and I continued to meet together at the tavern. We ran back and forth, discussed cases together, had a great, great time. Now, a couple of years later, we had a situation arise in our county that was called, believe it or not, the 2-cent parsons law. So here's the deal with this. Back in that time period, because of our drought, we would normally pay by tobacco. That's how we would pay someone. And tobacco was 2 cents a pound. Or you had a contract based upon a pound of tobacco being 2 cents. So that was the basis for your contract. During the drought, the price of tobacco went up. 2 cents, 4 cents, 6 cents a pound. And so to make it equal among all of the people, our House of Burgesses, our Patriots Board, our council said, we're going to declare that everyone gets paid a contract based upon a 2 cent pound of tobacco. That way we're all equal. And so the House passed that, and I said, that sounds good to me. But we have 5 clergy, Anglican preachers, somewhat well-fed preachers who said, we can't live on that. We are going to sue the colony of Virginia for 6 cents per pound of tobacco by either our pay in tobacco or our contract worth. And so the House of Burgesses said, you can't do that. And so these 5 parsons appealed to England, and England came back over the House's head and said, you give these 5 those 6 cents or else. And so we had to defend the colony's decision to maintain that 2 cent price. And so guess who they came to defend the colony? They came to yours truly. And they said, Patrick, will you defend the House of Burgesses? Will you defend Virginia against those 5 clergy and against the crown? And I said, let me at it. Let me at it. So I walked into that Hanover County courthouse. You'll never guess who the judge was. Can you guess?
Thomas Jefferson.
It was my pa. It was John Henry. And so I thought I might have some good times with this one. And so their defense came up and they said, oh, these 5 men, well, they're emaciated, they work so hard, they're getting just 2 cents for the pound of tobacco, this is horrible. They had appealed to England, and finally England had mercy on them. And I thought, yeah, right, let me up there. When I got up, I said to the people, this is tyranny. What right does the King of England have to tell us how to rule our economy? What right? Is it yours or his to decide what we do in our colony? Now when I said that, there were some who said, treason, treason, and others applauded. And then I said, do these 5 men look emaciated to you? Do they? And there was quiet smiles all around that courtroom. Well, the jury went back in to decide their verdict. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. When they came back in, the declaration was not 6 cents, not 5 cents, not 4 cents, not 3 cents, 2 cents per pound of tobacco. I won the case. That was my first big victory. And in 6 months, I had 164 new clients. And so I had some prosperity at that time again, and I was thankful for that. Wonderful how God works all things together behind the scenes. I was so thankful for that in my own life. Well, very interestingly, at that time as well, there were so many things that were going on behind the scenes. We had some more issues with England. The Stamp Act. I don't know if you ever heard of the Stamp Act. So they have this idea that they're going to enact in us taxation on everything that's a paper good, even that we produce ourselves. So stationery, newspapers, magazines, deeds, marriage licenses, no matter what it is, you had to buy a very hefty stamp. And again, taxation without representation. There was nobody from the colonies in England making these decisions. It was all executed without our input. So at that same time period, a seat on the House of Burgesses opened up. And so can you guess who they elected to become the new House of Burgesses? Again, moi. So there I am now on the House of Burgesses, and they said, Patrick, say something. Say something. So nobody else did, but I stood up. And I said, gentlemen, I'm the newcomer on the block. I'm new in the House. But I will tell you, we cannot stand this imploring from England sitting down. What are we going to do? We need to let them know that they cannot mandate to us taxation without representation. We need to make our voices known. And so we did. And so in 1766, that Stamp Act was repealed. And there were many again who came to me and they said, Patrick, you have been our hero of the day. You have had a voice when no one else had the courage to make those same statements. Now, a lot happened during that time period. The Boston Tea Party. You might know a little bit about that, where our colonists dressed like Indians and tossed some tea into the Boston Harbor. And my goodness, the response to that was horrible. Our governor, our royal governor at that time, said this to us: you better abide by our regulations or else. And when I heard that, I said to our House of Burgesses, it's time for us to fast and pray. We're going to fast, we're going to pray and seek God what our next steps should be. When the governor heard that, Governor Dunmore, he said, how dare you say that? We're going to disband, I disband the House of Burgesses. It is no longer. Can you believe it? In just that one statement, our governor dissolved the House. So we had no recourse but to create our own conventions there in Virginia. And so we had 5. Then they lasted from 1774 to 1776. First convention was going to be on August 1st there in Virginia. And so these were very, very hard days as well. Well, I will tell you that they were not only hard politically, but they were also hard personally. My beloved wife, Sarah, was struggling with depression ever since our house burned down. And we lost our plantation. And even though there were days she tried to dance and tried to enjoy the children and tried to pretend she was okay, I could just tell with time she became more and more despondent, more and more bereft. When we had our 6th child, our beloved 6th child, I could tell that not all was well. There were times when she could not even come to the table or even get out of bed. And I felt so inwardly torn for her. I was even advised to get medication for her, which did not help, did not work. And I was also advised to put her into a hospital called Eastern, a sanatorium. And by the way, people who were put in there were treated like criminals. And so I said, no way is she going there. She began to hurt herself and became also a potential harm for our children. And so I told one of our servants, Hannah, I said, Hannah, can you please look after our beloved Sarah? We're going to make a room for her downstairs in the basement, and we're going to make sure that she has the right kind of clothing that will prevent her from doing any self-harm. But you stay with her, and I will be here with her every day that I can when I'm not on the road, and check up on her and spend time with her as well. And so my beloved Sarah, I began to see continue to go downhill. My uncle would come and pray with her and read the Bible to her. We belonged to the Slash church where he also was pastor, and the 4th church where he pastored. There were small churches not too far away. And he would come and call on her, and he would pray with her. But the day came when I came home from my errands, and Hannah, I could tell by her face, had nothing but sad news to share, that Sarah had passed on. So we buried my dear Sarah at her wishes in our yard, 20 feet away from the door to the basement where she stayed those last few months. And my Uncle Patrick gave the eulogy, and at the end of our time together, my youngest child at that point said to Uncle Patrick, is my mama going to be okay? And Uncle Patrick looked at my child and said, my dear, thankfully our God is a God of grace, of love, and understanding. Your mother is going to be fine. And I really appreciated those words from my Uncle Patrick at that time. Despite the fact I saw him always being a very stern man, a very harsh man, at that juncture his love, I think, really came through for me. So we had some hard times. But the convention went ahead. And at the convention, they elected me to become part of the First Continental Congress that was going to be held in the Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia. And so I went with George Washington. I met him at his home, and we went from there to Philadelphia. And that's when I stood to my feet in that council, and I made this statement. Gentlemen, I am no longer just a Virginian. I am an American. We are Americans, first and foremost. The time has come for us to take that into consideration. And I was already about to make an appeal for us to break away from Great Britain at that juncture. But there was a man named John Dickinson from Pennsylvania who said, no. Slow down, slow down. Let's appeal to the crown, appeal to the king. Let him know our grievances, let him know why we are concerned, and then we'll see what happens. And so, at his request, he and I sat down together and we drafted an appeal to go to England. And it came back spurned. Spurned. Appeal number 2, it came back rejected. Appeal number 3, no response at all. That's when I knew we had no recourse. And that is when, at our second convention for our colony of Virginia, that was held at the St. John's Church in Richmond, I gave the speech that perhaps you think of when you hear my name. I stood on my feet before our men that day. This is exactly what I said. Mr. President of the Second Convention of Virginia, here at St. John's Episcopal Church of Richmond, it is natural for a man to indulge in the illusions of hope. We are apt to shut our eyes against the painful truth and listen to a song of that siren until she makes us into beasts. Isn't the part of wise men engaged in a great and arduous fight for freedom? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who, having eyes, we see not, having ears, we hear not, the things that so nearly concern their temporal salvation? For his part, whatever anguish of spirit it might cost, the wise man is willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst of it, and provide for it. Our British fleets and armies needed to work a reconciliation. Have we shown ourselves so unwilling to be reconciled that force is now brought to bear? These are the tools of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. Sir, we have done everything that could be done to avert the storm that is now coming. We have petitioned. We have complied. We have requested. We have humbled ourselves before the throne and implored its mediation to arrest the tyrannical hands of the ministry and parliament. Our petitions have been slighted. Our requests have produced added violence and insult. Our pleas have been discarded, and we have been spurned with contempt from the very foot of the throne. There is no retreat, but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their noise is even now heard in the streets of Boston. The war is already here. And I say, let it come. I repeat it. Let it come. Is it vain, sir, to extenuate the matter? Some may say, peace, peace. But there is no peace. The war is begun. The next gale will bring to our ears a clash of resounding arms. Our men are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that we should do? What do they want? Is life so dear or peace so sweet that to be bought at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take. But as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Well, at that, believe it or not, our beloved governor decided to go to the ammo supply and confiscate all of our ammunition, all of it, all of it. The Marines took that to the port to ship back to England. When I heard that, I mobilized the militia in Virginia and I chased after them. I came within 16 miles and our good friend said, Patrick, slow down, slow down, slow down. Not yet, not yet. And so I said, Governor Dunmore, you pay for that powder now. You pay for that powder now, which he did. So there was no conflict yet, but he paid for that powder. And not too long afterwards, we had Lexington, Concord, shots heard around the world. And we knew our time had come. Months of conflict, seething, simmering, until May of 1776. At our final convention, I made the plea, gentlemen, I recommend and I support and I bring to you a proclamation that Virginia should henceforth be an independent state, independent from the other colonies and from Great Britain, the state of Virginia. And it was seconded, and it was unanimous, and we passed it, and we became the second state in the Union. The first was Rhode Island, Little Rhodey, and then it was us. That was 1776. We began to draft a Constitution, and I led the way based upon what I heard from the Great Awakening to add to that a Bill of Rights. In my mind, there could be no Constitution without a Declaration of Rights. The right to bear arms, the right to speak your mind, freedom of the press, individual liberty, individual soul liberty, separation of church and state. Those were all a part of our document. And so we drafted that, and that became part of it. As a result of that, the good people of Virginia said to me, sir, we want you to be our governor. And so, I don't know if you knew this, but they made me the very first governor of the state of Virginia. And so I served 3 one-year terms from 1776 to 1779. So July 4th, 1776, our colonies made that same step. And we collectively declared independence from England. And I could not have been happier with that decision. Now you might ask the question, why was your signature not on that document? Have you thought about that? I was in Virginia as the first governor. So I was not at Philadelphia during that time, but my heart was with them, and I was so excited about that. And so I served Virginia for those 3 years. When those 3 years came to an end, the new governor became my good friend Tom. So Tom Jefferson became the second governor, and it was during that time, the war was still raging, by the way. During that time, Benedict Arnold, the general now in the British Army, attacked Richmond. And we had just moved our capital from Williamsburg to Richmond, and it was burned down to the ground. And so Tom had to lead the way to regroup and to rebuild that. Thankfully, Arnold retreated, and of course we then had Yorktown. Finally we had peace, the war ended, the peace treaty in Paris, and thank God that all now was a thing of the past, a thing of history. And I came back as governor in 1784, and I served until 87 in years of peace and prosperity for Virginia. A different time, because now we had the USA. But you'll also know this, I'm sure, I was not in favor of the United States Constitution as it was written. We had Federalists and we had Anti-Federalists. I was an Anti-Federalist. I would not support a document without a Bill of Rights. And so I did not want our folks to adopt that Constitution until we had a Bill of Rights. And so when you hear Patrick Henry was not in favor of that, that's the reason why. I wanted a Constitution, but I wanted it done right. I wanted it done the right way from the start. And so when it first came out, I was not for it. I was not for it. And so James Madison and I kind of went head to head on that. He was a Federalist. I was not. In fact, his wife, Dolly, went to my uncle's church. We had known her when she was a young girl growing up. And they would not invite me to the wedding, even though it was held there in West Michigan, in Western Virginia, because of our political differences. But believe it or not, he was prompted to later write the draft for what became the Bill of Rights, 1791. There it is. Individual soul liberty, freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, separation of church and state. There it is. There it is. The Bill of Rights. And with that, I felt gratified. Well, and now we are retired. And then you may ask, what about your personal life during those years? Well, I'll tell you. After my wife passed, my dear Sarah, 2 years later, Martha Washington introduced me to her cousin, Dorothea Dandridge. And Dorothea Dandridge came from pretty good stock. And Martha recommended her to me as a date. And we fell in love. We shared our values. And so I married Dorothea Dandridge. And together, with our children from Sarah, we had 17 children. So now in my retirement at our wonderful house here in Red Hill, we also have 77 grandchildren. So my retirement has been wonderful. Dorothea has been a wonderful lady. She's a real statesperson, and of course Martha heralds Dorothea as being one of the best first ladies ever, with the way she comports herself and the way she represents the wonderful colony of Virginia, now the state of Virginia, and our own wonderful country. So how do I feel about all this? Well, I feel satisfied. I've been asked by Washington to serve on the Supreme Court. I said, no, thank you. I don't want that. They encouraged me to be an ambassador to Spain. No, thank you. I appreciate that. No. Secretary of State. No, thank you. When he stepped down, Washington said to me, you ought to run for president. I said, no, I have no desire. And so my good friend John Adams became the president. A good friend of mine, and of course his wife Abigail, a good friend of Dorothea. So we had a wonderful time of celebration with them, and I loved that. So we're heading in the right direction. We're heading in the right direction. With Washington and with Adams, we have a good future ahead of us. So when Washington said to me, I might be the foundation, referring to himself, but you are the thread in that interwoven tapestry. I'm so thankful that he saw it that way. Looking back, I learned so much from my pa, my first wife, my father-in-law, my good friend Tom, and how things worked behind the scenes that I would never even thought about. Those preachers, their oratory, their values that were passed on to me. Now you might ask the question, whatever happened to Patrick Sr.? When he passed away in '77, he was not in favor of our independence. He was a very loyal Anglican preacher. He was a loyalist. And so we had a rift in the family, but that did not squelch our fellowship. So our family still loved one another, we supported one another, we allowed our differences. So Patrick Sr. supported my points of view, I supported his points of view. We agreed to disagree, agreeably. And so I'm thankful for the fact that even though he still maintained his own loyalty, he did not hold against me my quest for independence that we see today. So today we celebrate the United States of America with a Constitution and a Bill of Rights, individual soul liberty, pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. God bless you, my friends. What an honor to be with you tonight. Thank you so much.